All right, good evening, everybody. We are back with another Finn's Forecast show. We covered offense last week. We covered team needs for offense. All of us kind of put on our GM hats and told Chris Greer what he needs to do. We're all special advisors to Chris Greer. Now, look, Chris, if you're watching, we're available, man. I'm put us on the payroll. We're ready to go.
Bring it on, baby.
But Anthony, you're
yeah.
still
Sorry, I just said I have nothing going on. Come on, give me a
call. So tonight we're gonna switch over to defense. Defensive team needs, what we think Chris Greer should do, not specific players, but how he should allocate his assets towards the defense this all season. So we're gonna be doing that. Hopefully, we'll get the takes from the deep end, and we'll go over Miami Dolphins team news because a few things happened this week that bear repeating. So we are going to start that right after. Good evening, everybody. We are back. We are back. Yeah, I love that intro, guys. I absolutely love it. We are back. Another Finn's Forecast show. The offseason is officially upon us, and Super Bowl's over. It's really time to start digging in to the nitty-gritty here and getting into what we think the Dolphins should be doing. So first, I'm going to introduce the hosts. Anthony, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm one of the hosts. How about that? Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. There's a lot to talk about. No franchise tags are coming up soon here.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is maybe like a unpopular opinion, but I hate franchise tags. Yep. I think that they ruin people's careers and they should be outlawed. But right now they're not. They're still a legal thing in the NFL, and we have to deal with it every year. So guys get to be forced to play for a team they don't want to. But yeah, good way to start off the show, right?
Yeah.
Super positive, fellas.
Well, no, I agree with you on the franchise tags. There are very few players who have benefited from it, cough, Kirk Cousins, over the course of their careers. But, T. Higgins is dealing with that right now in Cincinnati, and I do feel for him because I know he wants a long-term deal so badly. So next we have Taylor. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm ready to get into our defensive breakdown. Our defensive episodes seem to be what's a nice way to put this?
Popular.
More positive?
More positive. More positive.
So
yeah,
I'm excited for this one, man. I think it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah. I was looking at a graphic this week. The Dolphins finished 4th in total yards this season. So as far as defense goes, total yards against, I should say. So as far as defense goes, it is a more positive show. We're bringing back our coordinator, Anthony Weaver, which is awesome. And, there are needs that need to be addressed. I think we can all agree on that, but they're less pressing, I think, than offense. So we can kind of, I guess Josh disagrees.
It's incredible because we're losing like half the defense, and yet we're still like so positive about it. We're like, yeah, the defense is great. Like, never mind the fact we're losing everybody, but it's okay.
Yeah, but we're getting back Jalen Phillips. We're getting back Bradley Chubb, hopefully. Bringing back Chop Robinson. There are pieces on this defense that are real game changers, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into all that. But last but not least, I'm going to introduce Josh here tonight.
What's up, fellas? Yeah, super. This was one of these shows that I had circled, starred, exclamation points on our calendar. I was super excited about this one, right? The offense, the offensive kind of how to fix Mr. Chris Greer, listen to us, was a fun show. And this, yes, I agree. The defense is phenomenal, right? We were very good last year with Weaves. To Anthony's point, we're losing a bunch. So this was a real fun exercise to kind of go through and we're losing our entire safety room. We, spoiler alert to the news update, but we lost a starting cornerback. We're getting pieces back, but it was a real fun exercise, man. And I cannot wait. I'm super stoked.
Yeah, it's last week was a fun episode. Tonight's going to be an equally fun episode, in my opinion. So we're going to go news around the NFL, and I think Taylor's going to bring us into that. So Taylor, take it away, man.
Don't mind if I do. So I don't know if you guys heard, but the Dolphins made a few releases. They released running back Raheem Mostert, tight end Durham Smythe, and Kendall Fuller. These moves will save Miami nearly $8 million as they attempt to get under the cap and be able to spend money in free agency. Josh, I want to start with you. What are your thoughts on these releases? We talked about the offensive players last week. So,
yeah, honestly, I saw all of them in a way. The one I was most shocked about was Kendall Fuller, right? I mean, I understand the logic behind it. The release saved close to $3 million. I think it's $2.76 million against the cap. Gives us a little more breathing room. But you're opening up a primary spot on your defense to save it's a huge amount of money, if we're being honest, but it's a huge amount of money for the four of us. But in the scheme of things, it's not really moving the needle from a saving the cap thing. So, that one kind of surprised me a little. Raheem Mostert, Father Time never loses, right? So that one I saw a mile away. They want the youth movement. Makes total sense. They'll probably bring in a vet. And Durham Smythe, this was, I believe I read somewhere, probably from Kyle Krabs, where this was his second lowest producing season other than his rookie year. And he substantially lost playing time. So, I mean, he had less playing time than Julian Hill. And we all know how we feel about Julian Hill, right? Now,
how do you feel about Julian Hill, Josh?
Well, you're pronouncing his name wrong. It's Jillian. So that should tell you everything, right? No, but not overly shocked. I think there's some more interesting decisions like Cater, for example, down the pipes. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Keith, what do you think about these moves?
Well, Raheem Mostert, thank you for your service, buddy. But and you were awesome. I'm not taking anything away from what he did for us in the 2023 season, because he was awesome that year. And he kind of defied Father Time a little bit. But like Josh said, Father Time comes for all of us. Kendall Fuller, spoiler alert, I'm going to be getting into that later on in the show. So I'm just going to save my thoughts on Kendall Fuller until later. And Durham Smythe, it's another dude. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. Honestly, you weren't good this year. You've always been kind of a middling type of player. It's time to move on. It's time to get more talent in the tight end room. So I agree with all of those from a cap perspective, even though they don't move the needle that much, like Josh said. But more so, I agree with all of them from a football perspective. So not super surprised by anything, ready to get some fresh blood in here.
Yeah. I mean, I was really on board the Kendall Fuller bandwagon when we signed him. But then you watch throughout the season, that's why hindsight's 2020, and you realize that they swapped out in Washington Kendall Fuller for Noah Igbenogany, and that ended up being a brilliant move for them. So
of course
Kendall Fuller,
It's
crazy how the NFL works. Who saw that coming, right?
Yeah, Easy E will go to Washington next year, and he'll have a 1,000-yard season.
Unbelievable. So, Kendall had struggled with injuries again this year, and then he was on the field. He was just okay. I mean, he didn't make any big plays or anything. He also didn't let up a lot of big plays, but we played the style of defense that wasn't really susceptible to big plays anyways, so it's hard to tell if it was because of him or just because of the style of defense we were playing. The whole time I thought that we would either keep Jillian Hill or Durham Smythe, and the fact that Smythe got released already makes me feel like we're probably going to keep Hill. Which he had a bad season. There's no other way to put it. But he was only a second-year UDFA, so.
Well, and you need butts in the seats, and he's on a rookie contract, so fine. as long as you address it.
Even better, he's on a UDFA contract. I mean,
Yeah,
practically
right.
peanuts for an NFL team.
It's life-changing for all of us, though.
Right. For the rest of us, we would never have to work again. But for him, I mean, And then Raheem Mostert, to me, I think this is a guy we end up re-signing if we don't find the third back elsewhere. If the guys we are targeting in free agency decide not to come here, the guys that we want in the draft are just too rich for our blood, or else we don't end up getting them. I could see like Raheem Mostert coming back, in the summer after all the training camps and stuff are done and all that crap, and he's like, yeah, I'll just slide in after all that stuff, and then I can see that happening.
Yeah, you guys kind of hit nail on the head with the Durham Smythe thing. Like, that is just a financial decision. Like, we went into this last week. I think I covered the tight end and running back room. Like, with Smythe, it was just, hey, you know what? You and Julian Hill both played similarly bad, but one person's making a lot more, and we need to get under the cap. So, Julian Hill, you get to stay. For now, at least. So that makes a lot of sense. Raheem Mostert, Keith, I think you said it best. Like, this dude was a beast for us in 2023. And the way he also played, like, he's not a power back, but the way he at least tried to play physical and get in there is something I just feel like, for me personally, I respected the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think in week 18, we're not really in playoff contention, right? But in hindsight, I'm sitting there going like, yeah, I wish we just gave him a few carries just as like a send-off. Like, hey, man, appreciate the 2023 season. You earned this. Go out with a few carries. Look good for another team.
Yeah, his season ended after the Indy game where he had 2 fumbles that cost us the game, right? And I think that the writing was on the wall, like very blatantly. Like, they didn't even hide it. You know what I mean?
It was a crazy turnaround for that. I mean, they went from like starting this guy. He was our starter still at the beginning of the season up to that point. And then it went from starter to we hope you never see the field again. It was real Skylar Thompson treatment there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But Kendall Fuller, that's the surprise to me. Like, not to the extent, like, Anthony, you said it best. He was just fine this season. So it wasn't like he played horribly. Yeah. But considering we have to retool we have to build an entire safety room. Nobody's on a roster. Like, Josh, you'll get into that later. And Keith, you'll talk about the corners. Good luck to y'all because you have the work cut out for you.
Oh, I was so excited to be able to say goodbye to these two. Oh, it's like Christmas came early, fellas, or late, whatever.
By the way, I didn't write it down, and I don't know if you'll get into it, but I'm just going to say I was surprised at Elijah Campbell's missed tackle rate. It was ridiculous.
I do not have that written down. I focused on 2 players specifically.
Yep. But all right. So we broken down, what happened with the Dolphins this week. We're not going to get into Bullygate because it's just not worth our time, really. But we're gonna start to get into our team needs here. So, just as a quick recap, we went over offense last week. Josh covered backup quarterback. Basically said, bring in a higher, make somebody the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL. And I think we all agree with that because we know who our starter is. We know how often he's injured. We need a guy who's going to at least not embarrass us when Tua is out. And then I went over the interior offensive line, and I just kind of said throw a bunch of resources at it. Free agency, draft.
How much money do you have? All of it.
Yeah, throw it all at it. I stand by that. I do. I stand by that. Next, Taylor talked about the tight end room, getting more talent in there. And I think, Durham Smythe's gone. Durham Smythe was still a member of the Miami Dolphins last week. So that kind of vindicates what Taylor was saying about the tight end room. Then we went, Anthony talked about physical receivers, contested catch guys. And I think we can all agree, again, that, that's a big need for the Dolphins. We have a bunch of speed guys. We have Malik Washington, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, all under 6 foot, all kind of lighter guys, faster guys, quicker guys. We need a guy who's going to go up and, bring down one of those fades that Tua likes to throw so much, one of those 50-50 balls. And finally, Taylor went over the power back. And again, we talked about Raheem Mostert just now and how he was kind of our de facto power back in 2023. But that's not really what he's designed to do. That was never what he was designed to do. He did a great job at it, surprisingly great job at it. But it's time we brought in a true power back, a true guy who's going to, you hand it off to him and he's going to get you at least a yard or two.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time we went in that direction. So from here, it's time to move on to the defense. It's time to talk about defense.
Let's go.
Time to get into the nitty gritty of what we think the Dolphins team needs are on defense. Josh, I'm going to start off with you because I know you're super excited about this subject. You want to talk about...
Give it to me. Give it to me.
You want to talk about safeties. So safety is a big need. I think we can all agree on that. So Josh.
Yeah, I will not fumble this ball like Raheem Mostert. Sorry, it's too soon? Too soon? Okay. All right, so just as a recap for those that did not or have not watched last week's show yet, I approached this, and I don't want to speak for the larger group, but we approached this as if we were recommending how to fix key positions of needs to General Manager Chris Grier. We are not talking about names specifically. We're not talking about who we should draft, who we should sign. Those are for later shows. We have entire segment or a series of shows dedicated to free agency, dedicated to the draft. But when it comes to the safety room, obviously we don't have anyone. And there's a lot of questions about, for example, Javon Holland, right? Who started off real strong his career and really pooped the bed last year, in my opinion, was probably, not a very good safety, right? From a league standpoint, not a very good safety. And he's going to, the word on the street is he's looking to cash out, right? He obviously, and we on the show, for those that are watching, are very pro player, right? Go get your bag, right? Go do what you got to do to take care of your family, but do it somewhere else, right? And so looking at the safety room, I really focused on our starters, Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer. Now, for those that are regular attendees of our show, know how I feel about Jordan Poyer, which is not good at all. But I'm going to start with Javon Holland. And Holland did demonstrate a lot of versatility when he decided to play well, when it came to both pass coverage and run support. But, honestly, he wasn't close to the player that we were used to seeing. Right. So, his first 2 years in this league, or first really 2.5 years in this league, he was top 5 safety in the entire NFL. And it was amazing to see. But in my opinion, Holland's production on the field, and I've said this before, it is directly tied to who is next to him. Right. Because of Holland's propensity to play closer to the line of scrimmage and be really that in-box safety and really hit those holes hard in the run game and in the short yardage. If he does not have a player next to him that can excel at kind of staying back and surveying the landscape and breaking on those medium to long routes, his play suffers, right? So the other thing that I really struggled with Holland this year, and why, spoiler alert, we're rebuilding the entire safety room, and I'm not paying them. Unless it is at a very team-friendly deal, whether it's a 1-year prove-it deal because, he kind of pooped the bed, or locking them up to a long-term deal. But that is very, and I hate to use this word, but that is very team-friendly. You're in a contract here, buddy. And this is the product that you put out on the field. Like, come on, man. Like, this is the time to play your best ball, and this is the time when you played your worst ball. And that's troubling to me. Because if you're going to shell over, if you're going to back the Brinks truck up, for lack of a better term, why would you do that for the, it's a what have you done for me lately league. That is very common. That's a very common phrase used when it comes to the NFL. So, there's a lot of red flags with Holland. When he's on. But we saw a lot of cracks in his armor this year, which has me paused. Now, when it comes to Jordan Poyer, did he provide veteran leadership? Sure. Question mark. Okay. I will argue, for in his favor, he was given the responsibility to kind of make sure the back end of our defense was aligned, right? Cornerbacks, safeties, all of that stuff. So that was a big kind of feather in the only feather in his cap, if I'm being completely honest. And I trust Weaver, right? Weaver has proven to be already very quickly proven to be a very good defensive coordinator. So if he trusted Poyer to do that, that must mean that Poyer showed something. Now, we didn't see what that something was on the field on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays, but it was there. My problem with Poyer was his play. If I'm just going to make it real simple. Poyer consistently was a step late. He consistently took bad angles. I mean, there was hours of film from this last season where he's taking bad angles. And he got burned a bunch. And as your last line of defense, that is not what you want in your starting safety. Like, I'm sorry, it's not what you want. And I know, guys, please don't roll your eyes. And for those that are regular listeners, please just grit your teeth when I'm about to say this, because I've said it a million times. But when a player comes in to the offseason and says the things that he did about the perception of this team outside of this organization, and that is the quality of product that you put on the field, see you later. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, right? So looking at league averages for safeties, and I'm trying to keep the stats to a minimum because I went kind of bananas last week. So total from a league average from the safety position, total tackles were approximately 70 to 80. Interceptions were about 2 to 3, and pass defended were anywhere from 5 to 7. Okay. Both of our safeties, for the most part, were slightly below average to below average. So question is, how do you fix it? Right. So this is Chris Greer asked me, Josh, I'm going to follow everything that you say to the T. Tell me how to fix this. Well, we obviously need to rebuild the room, so we're going to have to allocate resources to it. But for me, I'm allocating at least one of our top 3 draft picks to the position. And I'm grabbing another safety mid to late rounds as a project. So our third safety, kind of that Elijah Campbell role, if you will, to develop, right? I'm also signing a quality mid-tier vet. I'm not breaking the bank for one of the top safeties. Luckily, the safety position is outside of the top 5 players in the league. There's a huge drop-off, right, in average cost per year. So signing one of the anything at 30 or below. That's the age range that I'm looking for. I don't want another Poyer who's 500 years old and who can't play. And then, like I alluded to earlier, I'm trying to see if re-signing Holland to a team-friendly deal is possible, right? Now, what do I mean by team-friendly deal? In the $9 to $11 million average kind of range, closer to the 9 preferably. If we can do a 3-year deal with him with a player option in the 3rd year, or a 4-year deal with a team option in the 4th year, like something along, or even a 5-year deal, or whatever the case is, I'm okay with it, right? Because he's shown more positives than he has negatives. There are just a ton of red flags with him, right? In a contract you're playing the way he did. So I'm not breaking the bank for him, and I'm not making him one of the top 5, 6, even 7 top paid safeties in the league. Now, he probably won't accept that. So see you later. Thank you for your services. We have great memories. You were a leader on this team. Bye. Right? Wish you all the best. And that's really where I'm at. So to recap, 2 draft picks, 1 in the top 3, not top 3 in the draft, but top 3 picks that we have, and then 1 later in the draft, a mid-tier quality vet. And if we can re-sign Poyer, nope. Nope, just kidding.
I really hope that was a Freudian slip there, Josh.
Yeah, making sure y'all are paying attention. No, but if we can re-sign Holland to a more team-friendly deal while still making him a relatively high-paid safety in the 9 to 10 or 8 to 11 kind of range, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, I like it. I don't think that. For one thing, I don't think that Holland. I think Holland wants to get paid like the top 5 safety.
Of course, he does.
And I think some team is going to do that based on the film from his first 2.5 seasons.
Yeah.
So I think Holland is I think he's resigned to the fact that he's leaving. I almost think he wants to leave, guys. It almost feels that way. So it might be time to,
Scotty, welcome to the show, and you nailed it. Right, I know it was a long shot, but that's the only way I'm keeping him. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So Anthony, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, if we could get Holland at not a market-breaking deal, then sure. But some team is going to be stupid enough to pay him. I mean, why not? He's 24 or something like that. Will be 25 this year,
and with the cap raise that jumped as much as it did, I mean, some teams are going to throw money at him.
Yeah. Somebody's going to throw a stupid amount of money between the salary cap going up, just the safety position not being that strong, him having a good first 2 years before flopping out this year, first 3 years, whatever.
He's under 25 as well.
Under 25. Yeah. So somebody's going to just see all of those things and they'll be like, we can fix it. And maybe they can, and good for them. But I think we have way bigger needs than signing a mega deal for a safety.
Yeah. Agreed. Taylor, what are your thoughts on the safety position there?
Well, first off, Josh, you said you'd retain Poyer, and it's on film now.
Nope, I lied. I blacked out, guys.
But in all seriousness, what you were saying, it sounds like an overcorrection at first, but it's something to where you look at what we actually have under contract in 2025. Nothing. Patrick McMorris, and I like Patrick McMorris.
Sure.
I'd love to see what he can develop into, but we need at least 2 strong, starting safeties at the very least, and he would be, ideally the backup. But I'm not sure you'd want to trust that.
I would. I think he put some really solid tape on before he got injured. I was a huge fan of McMorris, right? And you don't want him as your starter, but as he's a serviceable backup should you need. But if he's your starter, you're kind of screwed.
But what you were suggesting was hey, we need to get 3 safeties, 2 in the draft, 1 high up, 1 later, and a vet pickup. Again, it sounds like an overcorrection, but it really isn't. When you look at it's a necessity on the team.
Well, it's a necessity because we don't have any. So
exactly.
We have to, right? And I understand. And look, here's kind of one of my logical kind of conclusions with this, right? So we're allocating. Let's say we allocate the 2 draft resources, so we have 2 players. We have Patrick Morris, which makes 3, and let's say we can't resign Holland, but we sign a mid-tier vet, so we have 4. If that mid-tier vet is beat out by the rookie, great. If that mid-tier vet is beat out by Patrick Morris for whatever reason, great. See you later. Fine. We tend to only carry, I think it's 3 safeties and 1 on the practice squad, or 1 as a kind of an emergency thing. So if that's fine, whatever it takes to get the best 3 or 4 guys in the room, right?
Absolutely. So safety, obviously a top need, and we're allocating a bunch of resources to all these positions. Obviously, not all of them can be addressed in one offseason, but we're going to move on to the next position here, and I think Taylor's going to take this one away.
That I am, and it is the interior defensive line, because we do need to retool it a bit. And I'm going to start with Zach Sealer. At 6'6", 305 pounds, he had 748 snaps, which was 70.3% of the snaps last year. 55 total tackles, 10 sacks, 1 fumble, 1 pick. He had a 33.4 PFF tackling grade, a 71.5 pass rush grade, and a 70 run defense grade. He's 30 years old, had 1 penalty, and he will be 1 total penalty, that is, and he will be an undrafted free agent in 2027. I think we all are in agreement here. He's easily a superstar on this defense. He's an excellent complement to the defined edge rush linebackers we have on the team, like Jalen Phillips, like Chop Robinson. He's a great run stuffer, clear-cut anchor on the D-line. I'd love to ideally get a 1 to 2 year extension with Sealer.
Yeah.
At his age, I don't know about adding too much to that, though. But as it stands now, he is clearly one of the best talent to cap number ratio contracts, not only on his team, in the league.
Yeah, what a steal.
I'd say.
What a steal.
Yeah.
An absolute steal. Also a steal, Calais Campbell. And the reason I wanted to include the height and weight is because of Calais Campbell and Calais Campbell alone. This man's a giant. Giants exist. His name is Calais Campbell. He's 6'8", 282 pounds. He had 57.8% of the snaps, which kind of lines up when you look at like his past few seasons. He's getting up there. It lines up with his last few seasons in snap count. 52 tackles, 5 sacks, a fumble, no interceptions. He did have a 28.2 tackling grade, 66.2 pass rush grade, and an 85.9 run defense grade. He will be 39 at the start of next season, had 0 penalties. He is currently a free agent. Although he was an exceptional player for us, and he's an easy Hall of Famer in my mind, he's not a long-term answer at this position. Like,
No, of course not. Yeah.
He was good as a complimentary pass rusher and as a run stopper, even considering that snap count I mentioned earlier. I'd love to bring him back for another 1-year deal, which would basically push back like this need that we have another season. So just be pushing the problem down 1 year, dealing with stuff like the safety room, corner room, and all that. That all being said, considering his age and current state of the team, it's already possible he ends up either retiring or going to chase a ring with a, I hate to say it, but a better team like Baltimore or Philly. We also have Deshaun Hand, Benito Jones, and Neil Farrell as the depth options. Now for Deshaun Hand, he did improve from his previous seasons across the board. He's not a particularly young player, but Hand does have experience in the system and can bring solid depth to the position. And I'll get back to Hand in a bit. I want to get through these other two real quick first. Benito Jones has he had a pretty slight regression compared to his season in Detroit in 2023-2024. However, he's still a decent depth option for the team, offering something different compared to his fellow D linemen, and that being size. He's 335 pounds. Nobody really on the roster compares to that except for one person. I'll get back to Jones here in a bit, but Neil Farrell is also at 325 pounds, and what's interesting about him is he's still under contract. Other than Sealer, Neil Farrell is the only Dolphins D lineman under contract. So I kind of wonder if he's going to take that Benito Jones role as a depth option in 2025. Before I get into why this is a need, how to fix it, all that stuff, I wanted to throw it over to you guys. Keith, what do you think about the D-line?
I think it's certainly a need, and I would be willing to bring Campbell back, but I wouldn't mind finding somebody, whether it be in the draft or free agency, who's a longer term option at defensive line. I mean, when we brought in Sealer, we brought him in on a kind of a prove it deal, and we were vindicated for doing so. I wouldn't mind going out there and trying to find another Zach Sealer. And I know those guys don't grow on trees. Zach Sealer kind of blossomed under us, but there are guys in free agency and even in the draft who are going to drop that we can bring in and kind of hope to have Zach Sealer mentor them and hope to get the best out of them. That being said, I don't see us spending a first round pick on defensive line, and even second round, I don't know. So we're gonna have to go bargain hunting again this year, and whether it be Calais Campbell or one of these other journeyman guys, I don't know that this is a need that we're going to fix this offseason.
I disagree with you, man. I think they address this really high in the draft, depending on who's available. Right, I'm talking like first, second round, because then your defensive line, your interior defensive line, is set for the next 5 to maybe 8 years, and you don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? Now, if Campbell wants to come back, whatever. Yes, please. Like, let's roll the red carpet out, come back, you play your 52% of your snaps, and you're a champ, right? But we have to lock this defensive line up. We got gouged so much up the center when Campbell and Sealer weren't on the field together. We have to do something. And for if Greer does not address this, it's one of those. It's like not doing the offensive guards last offseason. You know, in my opinion.
I would love to see them just spend the whole draft tackling the inside, the interior, man. Like, I don't even care if you want to use free agency to fill all the other holes. I would be completely fine with that because I just want to see the trenches kind of built up. Something I saw in my research, because I have edge rushers coming up next, spoiler alert, but something I saw is that most teams aren't relying on edge rushers like we're used to for pressure on the quarterback. The defensive tackles have become a huge part of rushing the passer. So they're just getting more and more. I mean, their job description is ever expanding at this point. So to have a good one, I think, is pretty important. To Keith's point, though, I have no idea what they're going to spend. I think as we get closer, we'll start to hear more rumors. We'll start to see, we'll start to get the mindset of where Greer and McDaniel are at here, and even the defensive coordinator. But you can't deny that defensive tackle is a need when we only have one real defensive tackle on the roster.
Yeah, and I'm really glad I reached out to you guys before getting into why it's a need and what to do, because you guys kind of debating over how big of a need it is. It's interesting because I think there's two options here. Like I said before, Zach Sealer and Neil Farrell Jr. are the only interior defensive linemen we have under roster next season. Good news, Zach Sealer is the anchor on the line, and you can build around him. So there's a great starting point when it comes to retooling the defensive line. But Campbell is a nearly 40-year-old player. The team has patched the issue last season with a bunch of one-year contracts. So with all that being said, you kind of have two options here. You either take Campbell, go like, hey, do you want to come back? Here's another one-year option. You run back the same strategy. Go bargain hunting, trying to find a bunch of one-year contracts, run this back, fill the rest of the holes on the team. But you still have to deal with it. Or you end up, whether that be through Campbell retiring or playing elsewhere so he gets an easier path to the Super Bowl, we'd have to actually revamp and do the work to get this defensive line revamp here. With Farrell already under contract and considering his size, as I said earlier, I wonder if there's a plan in place for him to replace that Benito Jones role on the team. So then you really only need about two players there. I'm not crazy about the defensive line class in free agency, but it is solid. You can find a few replacement starters there. And there's some quality depth options there too. I'm actually much higher on the depth options in terms of the starters in free agency. But draft-wise, there's also a ton of – like when you want – if you need offensive line, defensive line, or safety, I'll throw in the running backs too, this is the draft for you.
Yeah, Mike Mayock said that defensive tackle was his most depth in this draft, for him at least.
Yeah. So there's a chance we could get somebody who – I'm not saying we'll have an all-pro player in round 4, but we could pick somebody up in the draft in round 4, and he can actually play a sizable role on this team. That's how good the talent pool is. So that's how I would fix the defensive line. A little bit of free agency, a little bit of the draft. But you basically have two options. You either run it back as is if Campbell's up for it. If not, we got to actually go through and completely retool this thing because Anthony is right. It's about time for the team to go back to the trenches.
Absolutely. I like it. All right. So we're going to go back to the trenches just a little bit further outside here. Anthony, take it away.
Yeah. And of course, we'd love to hear everybody's thoughts too in the comments about any of these positions. It doesn't matter which one. Give us your thoughts on where you think the Dolphins are going to go on defense, what our biggest needs are on defense, because, we're all just fans here spitballing. So we'd love to read your thoughts and read your takes on the whole situation. So I get to dive into the edge rusher, and last week I dove into wide receiver, which I feel like had a lot of question marks, and now I get edge rusher, which has even more question marks because we have two potential superstar talents that just can't stay on the field in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. So the first question is automatically what do you do with those guys? Can you rely on them? Do you rely on them? Or do you look to go out and fill the spot, opposite Chop with another young talent in the first few rounds? I think a lot of what we do in the draft is going to depend on what those compensatory picks actually look like. I know we're expecting a third and a fourth, but crazy things happen sometimes, and it doesn't work out that way. I will say, and Josh, you could probably shed some light on this. The one site said Bradley Chubb's out was in 2025. I don't know if that means this offseason or next offseason. So is that next offseason?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Now
so
we can. There are tons of levers that we could pull to, like, should the team decide to keep him.
Yeah.
For the longevity of whatever's left on his contract, there are a ton of levers we could pull as a team to free up a crap ton of cap space. But again, that means he's on the team.
Yeah, my concern there with Chubb is just what even is he at this point? I mean, he tore every ligament there is to tear in your knee, and now he's trying to come back, and it's like he went a full year and a half now because it was December of the previous year. So by the time the next season comes around, it'll be nearly 2 years removed from the injury. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens. So Scotty in the chat says that we can cut him post June.
As a June 1st post cut, yeah.
A post June 1st cut, and we would be solid. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised. Sorry,
correct me if I'm wrong. We can't touch that money until post June 1st, though.
Right. Correct. And that's the downside.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're GMs. They have ways to do this. I mean, there's salary cap gurus all over the place nowadays. Yeah. So we'll see what we do with Chubb. We'll see if we decide to keep him. I think, to the point in the chat here is that we offer a pay cut or a restructure, see if he wants to stick around, try to rebuild his career. Jalen Phillips is immensely talented, but his body hates him, it appears, because he just can't stay on the field. I mean, the guy had, six tackles and a sack. He played just 4 games last year. Pressured the quarterback twice, tackle for a loss, 2 pass deflections, 2 hits on the quarterback. Like, he only played 4 games. He made so much he was so disruptive in just 4 games. I would love to see him get a full season, but I don't know that that's something we can rely on now. So when I look at our edge rushers, I see one guy. I see Chop Robinson. He came in last year. We were all we had question marks popping over our heads like they do like in cartoons and stuff. We're like, I have no idea what to think about this guy. First half of the season was super slow. Second half of the season, he came on strong. And, there was NFL stats popping up every time he was on the field with, like, he's leading the league in pressures since week 10 or whatever it is. So Chop finished the season strong. Other than that, though, we don't have anybody. Emmanuel Ogbah, who was our other most productive edge rusher, he is a unrestricted free agent. Quentin Bell had a okay depth-like season. He's a restricted free agent. And then we have Mo Camara, who couldn't get on the field, Cameron Good, who's a special teamer, and Tyus Bowser, who I personally thought was very good. And then I looked at his stats. He was very bad. So he probably won't be back. Sorry, Tyus. You weren't as good as I thought you were. So here's what I did, guys. To kind of determine where we kind of stack up in terms of our edge rushers with the rest of the league, I did the same thing I did with the wide receivers, and I looked at the playoff teams. These are the best of the best. Let's see what they're doing. It was interesting to me to see that a lot of the teams don't have traditional edge rushers. There's a lot of teams that have 4 defensive linemen. That's how they put them on the depth chart. They don't differentiate between defensive tackle and defensive end. They just have 4 D linemen. Then there was teams like the Washington Commanders who play a 4-3, but their outside linebackers were their pass rushers still, which you would traditionally see in a 3-4, but we actually saw that from them in the opposite. So I thought that was interesting. Other things that stood out to me, and this is a really painful one, is that Andrew Van Ginkel's an absolute freaking stud, and we let him go for nothing. Minnesota Vikings were first in pressures on the quarterback, first in tackles for a loss, first in quarterback hurries. They were second in sacks. So the Vikings were pretty good. The second half of that Vikings thing, because I looked at the top 2 productive edge rushers from each playoff team, and the 2 for Minnesota were Greenard and Van Ginkel. So it would be amazing if we could have had the foresight to sign Van Ginkel, but we put our faith in Jalen Phillips.
God, I loved him. I really did.
He really stole my heart during Hard Knocks too. because it just saw like the struggle like the lower tier guys have, and Van Gink like every day was just checking the news to see if anybody was making any rumors about him potentially getting a long-term deal. And every time he got called in the office, he would light up and be like, "Oh, maybe this is it. Maybe I got my deal." And he didn't get it from us, but he got it from Minnesota, and he's flourishing. So good for him, man. I would get a Van Gink jersey no matter what the colors are.
Oh, for sure. But how many sacks did he have? Like 12?
In total, they had 23.5. Let me see if I can see how many he had.
Sorry, I'll look it up. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, Van Gink had 11.5 sacks. Yeah.
Yeah, wild. Yep. Good for him. And 2 pick sixes, I think.
Yep, and played 81% of snaps. Wow. Actually, Minnesota's edge rushers played way more snaps than any other team in the playoffs. Like their 81% for both of their edge rushers was crazy. The second closest was Washington, and that they had 74%. So their edge rushers played 7% more than any other team. So it's not all bad though, because when comparing top 2 edge rushers, what I found is that we were in the mix with a lot of the statistics you would look at from edge rushers. So we were nearly top 10 in pressures on the quarterback. We were at 11. Same with tackles for a loss. We sat at 11, right? Quarterback hurries, we were in the top 10. We were at 7. And even QB knockdowns, we were at 10, which I don't know how the hell you measure that statistic, but okay, I'll take a top 10 stat anytime, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where we struggled was sacks, of course. Since I only looked at 15 teams, we were 15 out of the 15 teams that I looked at, but that we could have potentially been a lot lower in terms of the whole season stat thing. And the one that I really caught my eye was missed tackle percentage. 14th out of the 15 teams I looked at, and we missed our 2 edge rushers missed 11.8% of their tackles, and our boy Chop was the bigger what do you call it? The bigger number there. 16% of his tackles were missed for Chop, and we saw that in the beginning of the year. We would talk about it on the show often about how, hey, Chop, just reach your arm out or wrap him up or come on, bud. He ended up getting it towards the back half of the year. So
hell yeah, he's a stud.
He's an absolute stud. So why do I say all this stuff, right? Why am I throwing out all these stats? It's to say that our edge rushers were actually playoff, like they are comparable to the playoff teams this year in terms of top 2 edge rushers from each of those teams. So what do I want to see? I want to see us bring in another guy. I don't care if it's through free agency. I don't care if it's through the draft. If we get the extra 3rd round pick, I would love to see one of those 3rd rounders spent on an edge rusher. But I know we do have a lot of needs. So I really wouldn't be opposed to bringing in somebody else. I thought Emmanuel Agba, his numbers were really comparable to other guys filling a similar role as he was, where he was an edge rusher / like big boy run defender. He was pretty good, which is what you want from a depth guy. If we wanted to bring him back for depth, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Mm-hmm. Really, though, we just need the guy opposite Chop, and we need the defensive tackles. We need this offensive line as a whole to put pressure on the quarterback, because our traditional linebackers aren't used in that capacity, really. Yeah. So we need to get to the quarterback from the edge. Chop showed a lot of promise. I hope he keeps up with it. But there's nobody else on this roster that we can depend on to actually perform this role. So I want to see get these trenches stacked up, boys. That's what we need, right? I mean, it's enough of the Ferrari style of play, as Josh likes to say, and we need to add a little diesel into our engine here.
We need a lifted truck on like 38s.
Yeah. I'm hoping Bradley Chubb comes back and he, I don't expect him to be the player that he was before his injury, because he was, I don't know if you guys remember, like he was a true game changer prior to that injury. He was
9 sacks or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
He was balling out, man. He was playing the best football of his career at that point. I don't think we can expect that. And Jalen Phillips, I'm just hoping he stays healthy, man. I feel bad for the kid. It's getting to the point where it's just, I just want to see him stay on the field.
Let me ask you guys a question. If you could trade in some of Jalen Phillips's steady production when he's on the field right? A couple less sacks a year, a couple less solo tackles, that kind of stuff. For him to actually be on the field for the whole season. I mean, that's a fair trade in my opinion, right?
I mean, considering the turnstile we had at edge rusher this year, I mean, like our most snaps was Agba. He played 69%, and then it was Chop at 53, and then nobody else even hit 25.
That's wild.
So, like, it was just an absolute turnstile at the position.
I'd take that trade off too because we had Chop on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. And when you talk about Anthony Weaver's defense, he coming from Baltimore. And I think we talked about this a few weeks ago when we were talking about grades for the defense. Like how is Anthony Weaver's defense going to evolve? Like, is it going to be more Baltimore centric? Is it going to be his own thing? Because you look at the way Baltimore builds their edge rushers, they don't really pay their edge rushers, or at least they haven't in the last decade. It feels like they usually go through and draft them and then just let them go into free agency.
Yeah, their edge rushers were Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe this year, so they just get production out of whoever's available on the free agent market.
It's because they know how to draft.
Yeah.
And Scotty here in the chat going, we had low sack stats because our secondary played so soft. I kind of wonder, not to like fully push back on edge rusher being a need, but kind of calling back to what I said about the running back position last week, where my argument was like running back's still a need, but it's more so depth and getting the interior offensive line fixed before anything.
Yeah,
so I was just going to say, I guess what I'm saying is like, is the need at edge rusher more so like, yeah, we need some more edge rusher depth. Definitely love to get somebody opposite of Chop if Jalen's not the answer, if Chubb's not the answer. But is it more so on, yeah, we got to figure out this secondary before anything else?
No, because I'm a trenches guy. I'm an inside-out guy.
Me too.
I think,
Yeah.
you know, I think that it's just been proven time and time again that that's just how it works. You know, you very rarely get a team that builds from the outside in and is successful that way. Do I think we need another superstar? Do I think we need to trade for Myles Garrett? No, I don't think that's what we need to do. I think
on a team-friendly deal. No, I'm kidding.
Listen,
if we just get everybody on a team-friendly deal, we'll win the Super Bowl.
How hard is this shit, Chris Greer? Come on, man.
Yeah.
The reality is we need depth everywhere. I think I do not envy Chris Greer this year, and I know that he put us in this position, so it's kind of his fault. He dug his own grave here. But like, truly, there's no depth. I mean, we're looking at young guys who, and this is just the life of being a GM. You take a bunch of young guys that you hope can produce, right? I mean, we saw the LA Rams do it. They just got production out of all their young guys in the defensive line. Whereas Mo Kamara didn't do anything. Cameron Good is perpetually on special teams. Quentin Bell came on a little bit towards the end of the year, but was it enough to rely on him to be like a rotational starter? Probably not. So like, you know, it's not. It's always that kind of chicken and egg situation with GMs and players. Like, how much is it the GM and how much is it the player? And I think you know, eventually the players have to do their work too.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. So I'm going to move on and talk about cornerback. And, you know, speaking of working, you know, building from the outside in. But so this past season we had, you know, Jalen Ramsey as our number one quarterback. I would argue, and I think I might get a little bit of pushback on that from some people on the show, but I would argue that Jalen Ramsey still had a borderline Pro Bowl season. I think what? Yeah. I
might be the only one, buddy.
And I knew I would get some pushback on that. But Jalen Ramsey, according to Pro Football Focus, was 16th out of
really?
Yeah, 16th out of over 200 cornerbacks.
All right.
So when I say I think he still had a borderline Pro Bowl season, I mean it. I saw him out there, and I saw him making some plays. There were moments where he got burned. Brian Thomas burned him a couple of times in week one. Those plays were few and far between. He was a great blitzer. He was good in coverage. Just because you didn't hear his name a lot doesn't mean he wasn't having an effect on the football game.
That's fair.
And I think that's something we need to keep in perspective with Jalen Ramsey moving forward. He's still that dude. He's still a number one cornerback. He's getting older. He's getting long in the tooth. He's probably on the back nine of his career, but he's still he's still a very good cornerback, and we need to appreciate what we have with him. Outside of Jalen Ramsey, we cut Kendall Fuller. We have Kader Kohu, who finished 86th out of 223 cornerbacks. Kendall Fuller, incidentally, finished 75th out of 223 cornerbacks. It only goes downhill from there. You know, we got Storm Duck, who finished in the 150s. You know, so on this roster right now, we have Jalen Ramsey and we have a bunch of undrafted free agents and Cam Smith, who hasn't shown that he can really do much of anything in the NFL thus far. The reality of this situation for the Miami Dolphins is this, though. There's only so many needs you can address in one offseason. I argued last week the Dolphins should spend their first-round pick on offensive guard. I said I wouldn't be sad if they spent their second-round pick on offensive guard as well. I said that they should bring in an offensive guard in free agency. Taylor tonight argued for interior defensive line. Very good argument. You know, we should probably bring in another edge rusher, Anthony.
Not in the first round, though.
No, not in the first round. Yeah. But again,
Sorry,
these are all assets that we're allocating. This money and draft picks, and we can't just fix every single one of our team needs in one offseason. I think cornerback is one of those needs that we have to kick the can down the road a little bit. What do I mean by kick the can down the road? Bring Kader Kohu back, obviously, to play the slot for us. Mm-hmm. Hope we can develop Storm Duck a little bit more. Ethan Bonner, who was the guy I was hoping to see a lot of this season, didn't really materialize. Maybe we can develop him a little bit more.
Podcast man crush, fellas.
Yes. But mostly opposite Jalen Ramsey, I think we bring in another Kendall Fuller type of guy. What do I mean by Kendall Fuller type of guy? I mean a late 20s cornerback who has played good ball in the past. And we're essentially bringing this guy in on a 1 or 2 year deal with the knowledge that we're getting the last good bit of football this guy has left in. That's kind of what I'm looking at for this offseason. Maybe draft a guy in the 4th or 5th round to develop alongside these younger cornerbacks. But I think what we need is just another starter who can just kind of stem the tide a little bit. And another Kendall Fuller type. And if I'm in Chris Greer's ear, if Chris Greer hires me to be his special consultant, again, Chris Greer, I'm available. I'll give you my number. Let's talk. Let's bow out. But yeah, if I'm in Chris Greer's office, this is what I'm saying to him. There's, a dozen guys who could fill Kendall Fuller's shoes for the Dolphins this upcoming season. Guys who are going to they're not going to embarrass you, but they're not going to jump off the page at you either. These are bringing one of these guys on a team-friendly deal. Yes, we've been using that term a lot, but this time I actually mean it. Bring one of these guys in on a team-friendly deal, have them start for you, and develop the younger guys underneath of it. I think that's what you do for the cornerback this offseason because the rest of our needs are such that we can't just revamp the cornerback room. And it's just not – we can look at that next offseason. This offseason, let's just try to tread water a little bit. So tell me what you guys think about it. Taylor, what do you think?
You bring up some very good points, especially when it comes to like this exercise. And part of why I think it's so fun is because we are basically just throwing out like spend a first round pick on a D lineman, but also spend a first round pick on a tight end. Like It's all just for like fun of like, hey, these are team needs. Here's where we kind of think vaguely like here's how the free agency looks, here's how the draft looks, here's what we would do with it, And you're right, we can't allocate all those assets to all those positions of need, just quite literally impossible. So I think you bringing that up with the corners is a very smart thing to do because really that is the position that you kind of got to patch that hole, figure out who's going to start opposite of Ramsey, and go, well, we'll figure it out next season because we have to do so much right now. And hopefully the younger guys on the team can develop.
Yeah. That's, and Scotty says Will Johnson at 13.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I get it, man. I'd love to see Will Johnson.
But it also depends on who's there, right? I mean, if it's between Will Johnson and that tight end that who shall not be named that everyone loves, or an offensive tackle that should be an offensive guard from a little school in Texas. I mean, I'm just saying, right? I mean,
or even Membu. Like I love Membu at 13.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we've just named 3 guys who the Dolphins should draft at 13. We can't draft all 3 of them.
But we trade Tyreek Hill. And we also trade all our picks to get another first-round pick, and we move our picks back.
Yes.
Well, I'm advocating here is draft day 2. Let's get Kevin Costner in here.
The great thing about all this is it seems like there's a lot of options for us at 13.
There really is.
That's like tremendous.
Yeah, and what I really hope Chris Greer doesn't do, which he's done in the past, is force a pick. Because he's panicking on a position, right? Take the best player that you have on your board. That we have a lot of positions of need. We have done going on 3 hours of a podcast over the last 2 weeks, going on to key positions of need. So pick the best player available and move on. Don't panic because there may be a run. Just take your best player on your board and don't overthink this, because I feel like Chris Greer sits in that room and he's like, oh my God. I'll take Noah Igbenogany at the end of the first round when it's like, okay, brother, like, what are you doing?
And that's, to be fair, that's kind of what I thought he was doing last year with Chop Robinson. And it turns out I was wrong. Turns out I was the fool on that one.
Well, you're not a fool. I think most people are like, huh?
Yeah. But,
he was a rookie this year. Let's not crown him yet.
But he
best player available is the move. Like that is kind of the whole. Like you said it perfectly, Josh. This is a team that we did not make the playoffs this season. There's a lot of holes on the team. That's not to say that the Dolphins completely suck and there's no bright spots. There are a ton of bright spots on this team.
Mm-hmm.
But again, did not make the playoffs this past season, and that's for a myriad of reasons, including availability. And with a team that you have a lot of questions about its toughness, I mean, you just got to pick at some point, like, hey, yeah, you know what? Not necessarily exactly what we would ideally want, but this is the best guy on the board right now that will fit into our culture.
Absolutely.
Perfectly said.
Yeah. So, again, looking at cornerback, Will Johnson, certainly a possibility there if he drops. There's just so many needs on this team. I just don't know that we can, guard to me. And
for sure.
I'm beating a dead horse here, guys.
No,
I say this every week, but guard to me is the number one need. Guard to me is the need that the Dolphins need to prioritize this offseason. And if we address offensive guard in spite of, to spite the cornerback room, look, so be it. Sacrifices have to be made. And you can't build up an entire roster in one off season. One thing that I did love about the way Chris Greer handled last off season was he was adept at shopping in the bargain bin. He brought in guys like Jordan Brooks and Kendall Fuller, guys of that ilk, on Anthony Walker on team friendly deals. The defensive line room, the defensive tackles that he brought in, he did a nice job of building up this roster, building up the depth on this roster, if only for one season. But he did a nice job of that. And I think he's going to have to do that again this offseason because we have so many top talent, top salaries. We have Tyreek Hill making a ton of money. We have Tua making a ton of money. We have Teron Armstead making a ton of money. Jalen Ramsey. We need to just kind of wait until these contracts get off the books a little bit before we can go spending big on free agency or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're going to get away from cornerback here, and we're going to move to our last position on the defense that we see as a need. Josh, take it away.
Yeah, quick shout out to Scotty for holding down the chat, man. Love seeing the interaction and give us your thoughts on every position that we've covered and what your thoughts are. I know, Scotty, you've been doing a great job at keeping the conversation flowing. But as far as the linebackers go, right? We know Weaver, it was said by many of you guys already, Weaver uses a 3-4 defense, right? Which emphasizes versatility at the linebacker position, right? Your linebackers have to be able to do everything. They have to be jack of all trades. They don't need to be, if they're great at both, phenomenal, right? But at the very least, you need your linebackers to be, very, very good at both covering and pass rushing, right? Because that is how these linebackers are used. Given the current roster and the demands of his system, there is a little bit of work that needs to be done, right? So who do we have currently on the roster, right? We had a bunch of players that were kind of mid-tier, mid-E type players that are going to be unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents. Brooks is signed through 2026. He was 8th in the league in total tackles. He had 86 solo. Overall grade of 74.3, which is around the 40th in the league at linebacker. So we need to see him step up a little bit, but he was an anchor for our defense at the linebacker position at playing close to 93%, if my research is accurate, of defensive snaps at linebacker. I think he had 1,049 total defensive snaps played for the season, which is huge. He was everywhere. Backups, Dotson, Walker Jr., Quentin Bell. Dotson and Walker Jr. are unrestricted free agents, and Quentin Bell is a restricted free agent. So of those three, I would love to see one or two of them brought back, right? I think my choice in order would be Dotson is a requirement, and I will get to how to fix this position room in a second. Spoiler alert, Dotson's on that list to resign. And then it's a choice between Walker Jr. and Bell. Honestly, I could go either way. They both kind of, Walker Jr. is better in pass defense, better in coverage. Quentin Bell's better in run defense. And okay, pick your poison. Our lovely draft pick, Tyndall, out of the University of Georgia, is the end of his rookie contract ends at the end of 2025. So probably not going to stay on the team. And then we signed William Bradley King to a future contract, whatever, right? We'll see what pans out in practice and during the offseason, organized team activities and stuff. And maybe he's on the practice squad. Maybe he's like the linebacker number, insert last number on the team. But there is a type of player that I'm looking for. And I'm actively going against what I tried to not do in all of my positional analysis, which is talk about names. I'm going to give 3 names. I need everyone to understand that in no way, shape, or form am I saying that these are the 3 players that we should go after. I would love for one of them. But, because of how our linebackers play and what the requirements in Weaver's system is for the linebacker position, Dre Greenlaw, Nick Bolton, Zach Bond, right? Those are the type of players, or that is the type of, we need to get a player in the building in those molds, right? Now we understand Dre Greenlaw is 28 years old, coming off an injury, only played, I think, a third of the season. So, he's a free agent. Maybe that's the type of player we go after. Who the hell knows? But that is the type of player, whether it's free agency, whether it's draft, whatever the case is, that I feel best fits next to Brooks, right? So how to fix this position, right? What am I offering up to Chris Greer? Because, hey, look, he's calling me right now. Let me give him my opinion.
Is he?
No, I wouldn't be on this podcast. Sorry, fellas.
Wow.
I would be pushing it though, for whatever that's worth. Draft picks in either rounds, in rounds 3 or 4, right? We don't need to spend a premium top 2 first or second draft pick on this position, in my opinion. But I do think we need to address it before lottery pick flyers in round 6 and 7, right? And this is a deep position in the draft, so we should be able to get a player that fits what we're looking for. I also think we should be going after a higher end free agent, right? On the young side, there are a few that are coming out, Dre Greenlaw, that are a little young, that are a little on the younger side, that we can sign to a longer term contract to allow whoever we draft time to develop, right? So we're not thrusting a Chop Robinson in when he probably wasn't ready at the beginning of the season, and then bashing him for the first half of the season until we all love him, right? I'm thinking in the price range of $7 to $9 million average per year contract, right? Whether it's a 3, 4, 5 year contract, whatever, like that's not for me to decide. And here's why I'm kind of focusing on the higher end free agent as opposed to kind of bargain bin shopping for this position, right? Our D requires that linebackers, our starting 2 linebackers do everything, right? They're good at everything. Kind of like how San Francisco and Kansas City built their linebacker room, right? They're fast, they have speed, they can cover, they're good at their quick decision, they're quick twitch, and they can rush the passer. I'm just tired. At a certain point, we have to start ticking off positions where we're signing long-term viable players on long-term contracts, whether that's cornerback, whether that's linebacker, whether that's defensive, whatever the case is. We need to stop, spackling a crack in the wall and just fix the damn wall, right? So whether that's linebacker, whether that, like I said, whether that's one of the other many positions that we talked about, that is the direction that I think we should go. In my opinion, I think if we can lock up a younger linebacker next to Brooks, I think our linebacker core is set. And then we just fill in with the draft. And then when those players are ready to step down or take a lesser role, we have our young guys step in and take a larger role. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I like it. I don't know how I feel about Dre Greenlaw. He's 28 years old, and I don't know that he's going to regain his previous explosiveness after that Achilles injury. If we're getting the Dre Greenlaw of 2 years ago, sure, great. Yeah, I love it.
Would you rather have Tyndall or would you rather have Dre Greenlaw?
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear you. I hear you. But, and Zach Baughn's another guy. Like Zach Baughan, he had one good season with the Eagles. I don't see the Eagles letting him go personally. I think the Eagles are going to fight tooth and nail to bring that guy back.
And Nick Bolton's going to reset the market, so we should not be paying him that kind of money.
So as far as bringing in a guy, bringing in a higher price free agent, I just don't know where there's a fit there.
Well, I used the word, and I'm sorry, I just want to make it clear. I use the word higher priced free agent.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that we're breaking the bank for a linebacker in free agency, but I do think we need to spend more than the veteran minimum, right?
Yeah, of course. And I think, Jordan Brooks was a guy that the Dolphins brought in last offseason. I think we can all agree that he was one of our defensive MVPs this season.
Yeah, hands down.
And if there's another guy out there like that we can kind of bring in on a cheaper deal because of past injury issues or whatever, and he comes in and pairs great with Jordan Brooks, great. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing Dotson come back and be the starter opposite Brooks.
Hey, great option, right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
Sorry, I was going to say, I mean, this position to me is you re-sign Dotson, you re-sign Walker, and then if somebody falls to you in the draft, fantastic, right? And if they don't, well, then they don't. You have your 3, and you can pick up some depth later, and you're fine.
Absolutely. Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know about the double dipping there, especially if you're getting more younger pieces there at the linebacker position instead of just another vet and then somebody to replace. So the only thing I'd kind of push back on is ideally it would be get a free agent guy on the younger side and then draft about 2 years from now in a somewhat premium way. But that's about it. Like, it is a position of need to me because exactly what you said, Josh, like the way that this defense does operate, the kind of linebackers that you would assume because of Baltimore's defense, because of this past season, the kind of player that Anthony Weaver would like. So, only thing else I want to add is, just as a side note, I'm not naming any other names, but it is wild how Greenlaw broke or tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
Was on the sideline in the Super Bowl, right?
Yep. Yeah, he tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl. He's running out on the field. And, terrible injury. I feel bad for the kid. But, again, it's one of those things where is he going to get that explosiveness back that he once had? He's not over the hill just yet at 28 years old, but it's fair to wonder if his best football is behind him. And if it is, we're going to bring in a guy on a contract based on what he was 2 years ago. And he might not be that guy anymore. These are the kind of contracts I want the Dolphins to avoid personally. These are the kind of contracts the Dolphins have paid out to guys in the past and have paid dearly for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, inside linebacker is an interesting position. I don't know what they do. It's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Free agency is going to be interesting in general.
Yeah.
Less than a month ago, it paints the picture for the rest of the offseason. It's just
I'm so excited. Yeah. Not to mention, spoiler alert to those that are watching, but on one of our upcoming free agent shows, we'll announce it in a more succinct way later. We have a very, very prominent and very special guest joining us, and I am so excited.
Yes, absolutely. We are all excited. We are all absolutely excited for this. So, but we'll tease that a little. Well, we've already teased it.
Yeah,
and
quite a few times.
we'll continue to tease it until it gets closer. Mm-hmm. But for right now, guys, we are at the hour and 17-minute mark. I'm proud of us. We didn't
nailed it.
We didn't go too far over our time limits for all of our segments. So that means that we have time for takes from the deep end.
Let's go.
Yes.
All right. Fellas, strap on your floaties because we're diving head first into the deep end.
Takes from the deep end.
All right, fellas, this is one of my favorite segments. I absolutely love this. So it's time for takes from the deep end, right? This is where, for those that are not aware, this is where hot takes come in from our fan base, from our viewers, from people that comment on all of our social medias. And I present these hot takes to my lovely co-hosts, and they sink or swim.
Oh, thank you.
Let's start with you, Mr. Anthony. All right.
All right, let's do it.
Takes from the deep end, where both lines are important to a successful season, the Miami Dolphins should prioritize finishing the defensive line build, as it is much closer to completion, given that defense wins championships. This is not to say that the O-line is not important.
That is tough, man. I actually don't know what my opinion on that is, to be honest. I don't believe that the defensive line is that much closer. We have two pieces on the defensive line, and I could argue that we have three on the offensive line. 3 out of 5, 2 out of 4, so it ends up being the same.
That's fair. That's fair.
6 or half a dozen, right? Yeah, I agree that defense wins championships. If we're looking at the Eagles and how they dismantled the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, it was very much through defense. And I would love to see a good defense again. I mean, like a really game-changing defense. I know statistically our defense did okay last year, but in games where, we lost them at certain times. We lost them against Seattle, and we lost them in some key moments throughout the year last year. So if you're asking me would I rather see a dominant offensive line or a dominant defensive line, I would probably agree that I'd rather see a dominant defensive line. More fun to watch.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You guys want to chime in on this, or?
I'd rather see a dominant offensive line.
Okay. What about you, Taylor?
Dominant offensive lines are just. I love it so much.
I saw that. Now, granted, the Eagles won with both, but seeing Saquon Barkley just.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm diminishing Saquon Barkley getting him 2,000 yards.
No,
he is an excellent running back, top 3 running back in the league. but seeing him behind an exceptional offensive line is just it's beauty.
This is a split panel. This is a split panel, fellas, because I'm with Anthony.
Taylor, I couldn't agree more with you, man. Watching that Eagles offensive line, it's
all right. This is a Dolphin show, fellas.
It makes me feel certain things. I think the people
would agree with us.
What, Taylor?
What was it?
I said I think the people would agree with us.
Well, disagree. You don't know. Scotty, chime in. You let us know.
No, like Scotty knows. Scotty knows.
Scotty doesn't know.
But in all honesty, Anthony, like you brought up the Eagles as a reason for wanting a great defensive line. The Eagles had both, and that's what was so impressive to me about their team this year. Was their defensive line dominated that Chiefs offensive line, and it was really cool to see. But their offensive line was equally as dominant, and I think that's the dream, right? That's what we're all going for.
You can't say both in this question because then
I know.
You can't cop out. You pick one and you stick with it.
I want to be that little girl from that taco commercial. Why not both? And then everybody just celebrates.
Have some conviction, Keith. Come on.
Yeah.
No.
Put it on the table. All right, fellas. Keith, this is actually coming right to you, buddy.
All right.
Takes from the deep end. If Mike McDaniel ends up getting let go next season, who would be a better fit as our new head coach? Bobby Slowick, who was a top head coach candidate last offseason, or Anthony Weaver, who was a top name this offseason?
Anthony Weaver. He brings an air of toughness. There's a little bit of gravitas because he was a former player, played in the NFL for almost a decade. I think, I wasn't a huge fan of Slowick as a head coach candidate anyway. Anthony Weaver probably should have gotten a job. I would have hired him over Kellen Moore personally.
For sure. Not even close. Yeah.
So Anthony Weaver, absolutely. Give me those two names, Anthony Weaver, 100%.
Perfect. Real quick, Anthony, Slowick or Weaver?
I'd probably go fresh, to be honest. If I have to pick one, it'd be Weaver.
Well, of course, yeah. I'd go fresh. I'd go fresh too. But you give me those two options, Anthony Weaver.
Taylor, quick. Anthony Weaver. Slowick. Weaver. I love it. Clean sweep, fellas. Clean sweep. All righty, Taylor. Are you ready, sir?
I am ready.
Excellent. Buckle up, buddy. Takes from the deep end. If the team's top choice at each position is on the board when they pick in the first round, should the Dolphins take an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a tight end, or a safety?
Why did you do this to me?
Because I love you.
That's tough.
I despise you for that's the one I had to pick. Oh man.
You can only pick one. There's no trading down. There's nothing. You have to pick one of these positions. Your best player on the Miami Dolphins board is available at each one of these. Who are you taking? Which is honestly probably close to accurate.
I have to just explain this just so I don't get absolutely destroyed. I'm assuming
kicker.
What I would like to do is, see some offensive linemen get signed in for agency. I do actually like the interior offensive line class once you get into it in for agency. With that being said, with all the top options on the board, I'm going tight end because I'm fully on the Tyler Warren.
Fancy.
He's sticking with his Tyler Warren take.
Yeah, Kyle Krabs, a few weeks ago. I think it was a few weeks ago. It seems like he's on
last
board
week.
too.
Last week, Warren.
Yep. Oh, time has no meaning anymore.
Oh, so you're just stealing other people's takes, Taylor? Is that what you're doing here?
No. Hey, when I brought up the Tyler Warren thing, it was like a month ago.
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, Taylor. All right, so you're taking a kicker, Anthony. What about? No, I'm kidding.
I'm taking a tight end. Let's go.
Hey, you can play kicker too.
I'm going one of the trenches, offensive line and defensive line.
Pick one.
Whichever one's better. Yeah,
you have to pick one. They're all the best player on your board at each position.
It's not going to be tight end or safety. That's ridiculous. And at pick 13, I feel like. So I will go offensive line.
Okay. What about you?
Well, Taylor, as much as I love Tyler Warren, and I do love me some Tyler Warren, that guy is Travis Kelce reincarnated, honestly. Offensive line, always offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Malachi Starks kind of seems really nice at their team, but that's fine. Honestly, I'm probably going defensive lineman. I think with how this draft is, there's quality guards later on in the draft, quality defensive linemen. There's like 3 or 4, in my opinion. All right, excellent. Fellas, do we have time for one more for everyone, or maybe one more for the group?
Let's do, if we can keep it short, let's do one more for everyone. We went an hour 45 last week. I don't see any reason why we can't do it again this week.
Excellent. So I'm going to do, there's one for everyone, and then there's one for the entire group at the very, very, very end.
Okay.
And it will be very short. All right, Anthony, you're back up, buddy.
Yeah, man. That's what I live for.
With the hiring of Bobby Slowick as a senior passing game coordinator, the hope is that Mike McDaniel will feel comfortable enough to relinquish some semblance of control designing and calling plays on Sundays. What are your thoughts? I forgot the on Sundays. Whoops.
My thoughts are is that it's like we're propping up a child to grab onto the monkey bars because they can't reach themselves. Like, I have no idea what the structure is that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
But we have an offensive coordinator. Last time I checked, what the hell is he doing?
Developing a quarterback.
Right. So then we bring in Bobby. Like, well, the offensive coordinator is fine. Frank Smith is doing great. Let's bring in a passing game coordinator, whatever the heck that means.
Yeah. Who the hell knows?
And then everything will get better. Like, I have soured on Mike McDaniel after this past season. I just saw the team quit on him. There just wasn't enough there, man. Like, I know Scotty's, in the chat over here blaming Weaver for some of this defensive stuff, but like, the offense put this defense in a terrible position in so many ways. And changes weren't made to the offense that should have been made so many times. Like, sure, having a passing game coordinator, maybe that helps with the planning. Great. But it doesn't help with the really poor decision making that happens in the moment at game time every single Sunday. And I don't know what else we could do to prop the guy up other than hire another head coach and call him like co-head coach or something like that. Like, I don't know.
The senior passing game coordinator.
Right. Like, what other positions are we going to make up here to prop up this coach? Yeah. If you need that much help, then you're probably not the guy.
I love it. Do you what about you, Taylor, Keith? Want to weigh in or move on?
I'll chime in real quick. I think that I don't know about if you can prop up coaches kind of thing, because look at Bob Saleh went to Green Bay last season, and what was pretty much just a consulting role. I wouldn't say LaFleur is a bad coach. Like, I'm not trying to sit here and be like Mike McDaniel's a great coach, but I'm also not sitting here going Bobby Slowick is this hot name that, well, I also am excited that he's on the team and he's part of the coaching staff and what does seem like we'll throw you somewhere on the payroll kind of role. I'm not sitting here going like, oh man, the whole offense is going to change because, he got fired from Houston and a lot of Houston fans were very glad that he is not there anymore. That's how bad that offense regressed.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see with Slowick, but I'm not going to sit here and go like, oh, man, this just shows McDaniel's not the guy.
Well, and I think that this take is more about this person, this fan, the person that commented, that sent this in. Mm-hmm. I'm interpreting this as, I don't want, I being this person, I don't want McDaniel calling plays anymore. Can we please give it to someone? Do you think Slowick should be it? Right? That is how I interpreted this. It's not, hey, he should replace McDaniel. It's, for the love of God, McDaniel needs to focus. Well, McDaniel needs to be the head coach and not also the offensive play caller, right? Because there's so much to deal with. So insert name, Bobby Slowick, Frank Smith, whoever. Do you think someone, I guess, if I'm paraphrasing this take, do you think that someone should take over play calling duty for Mike McDaniel so that Mike McDaniel can focus on everything else? And in this case, with that, then. In this case, he chose Bobby Slowick to be that person.
I'm with Scotty.
I agree with that take then.
I don't think he's given up play calling in any capacity.
Yeah.
No, I don't either, and I agree with you there, Anthony. But look, we've mentioned Philadelphia a few times this year. We've mentioned, what worked in Philadelphia. Well, Nick Sirianni relinquished control play calling duties, gave it to Kellen Moore. Granted, Kellen Moore is an accomplished play caller, but he relinquished that to Kellen Moore and kind of just oversaw everything. and that worked. Now what works in Philadelphia might not necessarily work in Miami. I'm actually going to buck the trend here, guys, and I'm going to say I'm okay with McDaniel calling plays again this season. I think a lot of the lackluster play calling, the screens that drove Anthony out of his mind. I'm surprised you still have hair left after this season, Anthony.
It's falling away very quickly, dude.
Why do you think I'm wearing a hat?
Yeah.
Why do you think I'm wearing a hat?
Look at I had a brown full beard before the season started.
Even worse, it used to be red. Now
I'm okay with McDaniel getting back to play calling duties. I think a lot of his play calls, a lot of his screens drove us nuts so much. That's a product of not having an offensive line that you can trust to block for more than 3 seconds.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
The running game that couldn't get going. Now you're behind the sticks at 3rd and 8, and you don't want to get Tua killed, so you just throw a bubble screen in hopes that maybe Tyreek Hill or Jalen Ramsey can bust one, or Devon Achane. You're very limited as a play caller if you don't trust your offensive line. And I'm not excusing Mike McDaniel. I'm saying let's pump the brakes on. Let's put our pitchforks away real quick and just okay.
No. I mean, look, okay. I'll tell you this. I've stopped pointing it at his neck. Now it's just at my side.
Okay.
But I'm still holding on to it.
My quick counter to that would be like, if you're not throwing the ball deep, then everybody proved that they don't need to worry about it, and they just stayed up against the line and they shut us down every play. And I don't know if that's on McDaniel or Tua. I truly don't, or the wide receivers for that matter, because we saw some bad wide receiver play this year.
Yeah. Whatever they had going on this year just wasn't working. Just all across the offense.
Yeah. Just to quickly add on to Keith's point, that we can move on.
Yeah, we do have to move on.
2023, we had Robert Hunt on the team, who was an exceptional guard, and you did have a better offensive line. And I remember quite a few times we're sitting at 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, and I honestly was not that worried because
it was like a 50-yard bomb, and it was right on the money.
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right, Taylor. In 2023, 3rd and 10 didn't feel nearly as daunting as it did this past season.
All right, fellas, we got to move on. We got a few more to get to. All right. So, Taylor, you're next. Would you rather have a wide receiver take about, or rather a take about a free agent wide receiver, or a take about a wide receiver that is on this team currently?
Free agent.
All right. Takes from the deep.
I want to name names.
Since Debo has officially requested a trade from the 49ers, would you pounce if the return is reasonable, or do you think that his decline is irreversible?
I wouldn't say it's irreversible. I just wouldn't do that trade because he's an aging vet and he's already on a contract that we'd have to pay. So I'd decline that.
So if it was for like and I'm making this up, and I'm not saying they would ever take this, but like a 5th round pick and Tyndall. I don't know. Like, would you take his contract and him as a player, or no, we're good, let's stay away, we'll draft a young guy, we'll sign him free agent and call it a day?
I don't mean to hedge bets, but it would also depend, I guess, on Tyreek at that point to be like, can we offload Tyreek for a second and a third, or second or a third? And because I just don't want all 3 wide receiver contracts there. That's just too much.
That's fair.
Considering the last 2 episodes we just did.
Nope, that's real fair.
Position needs.
Yep, that's real fair. Anthony, Keith, what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, this is a fragile gadget player that had one good season and fooled them into giving a whole lot of money, and now they're regretting that decision. So no thanks.
Yep. I wouldn't do Tyndall for Debo.
Clean sweep.
I wouldn't do
a clean sweep, because I'm in the same boat you guys are. And just as a reminder for those that are joining late, these are not our takes. These are takes submitted by fans. We're reading them and we're chatting about them. All right, Keith. Last, but not last. It's the last one for you individually, and then we have a fun final one. All right.
Okay, let's do it.
Do you think that Tyreek Hill's apology was genuine, and that, per Armstead, there was quite a lot for him to address and work through with the team? And I'll fill in the blanks here after he quit on the team.
I do think Tyreek's apology was genuine, and I think Tyreek does want to mend some bridges in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Teron Armstead he's onto something there when he says that he needs to make amends with the team, but I don't know that it's as grievous as he made it out to be. I think everybody knows what kind of guy Tyreek Hill is. He's emotional.
He likes tall women.
He likes tall. Oh God. Oh man. Everybody knows what kind of guy Tyreek Hill is. He's an emotional guy. He's he had a rough season last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, apparently he had a broken wrist all season. His season started off with being wrongfully arrested, guys. We need to take this entire 2024 season, put it in the trash, and move on. And I think that's what Tyreek Hill is going to try to do with the Miami Dolphins. Now look, he's going to make headlines off the field as he always does. But I do think he's genuine. I think he wants to be better. And I think a guy like, Teron Armstead has a good beat on things.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can just move forward because I don't think we're getting rid of Tyreek at this point.
I like it. Anthony, what are your thoughts, if you have any?
Yeah, what's the over-under on kids he's having in 2025? I want to get in on that.
Hopefully less than he has touchdowns.
Yeah. No, but I think, knowing, Josh, that you're a huge Ted Lasso fan, I think this is a real Jamie Tart situation here, who is an all-star player for the team, burns tons of bridges, and then has to come back crying and apologizing to the team until
be a goldfish.
Yeah. He has to mend bridges. Anytime you say something like that, whether it's through raw emotion or not, like, you said it, and you said it publicly, very publicly.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some, a bunch of times, right? So there's going to be lots of mending that he has to do in relationships in the locker room. Lucky for him, half the team's free agents. So
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Taylor, what about you, bud?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I do think it was genuine. It's just that I don't really know what his future on the team is. Like, that's kind of I'm very curious to see what we end up doing in free agency, because I think that's going to tell like what not only his trade value is going to be, but what exactly, like, will we be able to address that wide receiver room even more?
I mean, there is no conceivable future where he's on this team past this year, anyways. With a $53 million
that's kind of what I'm
saying.
saying. Like,
right? So
this is one and done, essentially.
Yeah, and because this is one and done, and because I'm sure Tyreek Hill, in order to pay for all those children that he has, probably wants another contract. He will probably, hopefully, maybe
not be
please
Javon
God play on his best behavior, be on his best behavior this season.
I mean, I think the power move here for Greer is to trade him before the deadline this year. If we don't trade him this offseason, like, see how you're doing. If you're 500 or lower, just get rid of him.
Get what you can and move on, right? Because not for nothing at this point, the $51 million or $48 million or whatever it is that we'd be saving next year is a win no matter what we get for him. So, all right, fellas, and last but certainly not least, this one came in kind of the 23rd hour as I was putting the panel together, and I laughed hysterically for far too long than I would care to admit. Is Einhorn Finkel? Or is Finkel Einhorn? And for those of you that don't know, this is an Ace Ventura reference. So, fellas, is it Einhorn is Finkel or is Finkel Einhorn?
I don't even know how to answer this.
They're honestly, I just thought this was hilarious. There's no way to answer it. Taylor's like, what the are you guys talking about?
I haven't seen this movie in years.
I'm gonna say Einhorn is Finkel.
I like it. All right, fellas, that is it from the takes from our fans. I will have a whole nother subset of them for next show. I'm excited. If you have any opinion, there you go, Scotty. Finkel is Einhorn. I agree with you. If you do have a take that you'd like us to read, feel free to comment on this video with that take. Comment on any video with a take, and we will grab it, and it will make the cut.
Awesome. All right, so guys, we're at the hour 40-minute mark. It's probably time to call for the night. First, I'd like to shout out Scotty. Scotty was a rock star in the chat tonight. So thank you for tuning in, man. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate you engaging with us and love your takes. Love what you brought to the table, dude.
Oh yeah.
Moving forward, we're going to, obviously get into free agency and the draft and all that stuff. Next week, though, we have
So excited.
it's going to be a fun show. We're going to do an opponent review show. So we're going to go through our 2025 opponents and do a review show on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that one. And so tune in next week, and we'll go through all that. But again, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm beating a dead horse here, but just because the season's over doesn't mean that we're done creating content for you guys.
Mhm.
We have free agency shows. We have draft shows. We're going to go live during the NFL draft this off coming up. We're going to. We teased it. We have a special guest coming on our show on the 19th, I believe, right?
Yeah, March 19th show.
March 19th,
which is the free agency recap show.
Yes. So a lot of fun stuff coming up, guys. We're going to keep on creating content for you throughout this entire offseason to get you primed up for the 2025 season for the Miami Dolphins. So if you like what you saw tonight, please like, subscribe, leave some comments. We love seeing comments on our videos. And, it's going to be fun. So I'm going to get to final thoughts from you guys. Anthony, any final thoughts?
Yeah, as expected, guys, lots of negative comments about Tua on the videos that we post. And I got to give a shout out to Irving Figueroa. He's joined us live once before, but he's always in the comments, white knighting for Tua, defending our boy out there. So shout out to you, Irving. Keep it up, buddy. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, Irving, you and I, we're one and the same. I love Tua too.
Same.
Taylor, any final thoughts, man?
Just excited for next week, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I put a lot of research, like all three of you did, into the last two episodes, so I am really excited to talk about next year's opponents and just have a little bit of a lighter show, I guess, if you will.
Good point, bro.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. These last two shows were so much fun, but holy crap, that was a lot of research.
Yeah, they were intense. They were intense. A lot of, like you said,
for you, the fans.
Yes, yeah, we do it all for you guys. So yeah, next week's show is going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun. Not that they're all fun. They're all fun. But next week's show is going to be. It's going to be cool.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So Josh, any final thoughts?
Nothing much, man. I count my blessings that we have this avenue to share our opinions and talk about the Dolphins year round. To those that watch on a regular basis, to those that are new, really truly appreciate you guys listening to us four idiots talk about our favorite football team. We really appreciate what you guys contribute to the show. Like and subscribe, please. It really does help us continue to do this on a weekly basis. And really super pumped, not to use Keith's term, dead horse meat stick. I am super, super pumped for next week's show. To Taylor's point, it's going to be a little on the light side. We're going to just get to chop it up about teams and how they match up. And so I'm super, super fun. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, like, subscribe. We will see you guys next week. For myself, the Philly Fins fan, for Anthony, for Taylor, for Josh, the Aqua Ace, we will see you next week.